Good afternoon, everyone. I call this October 12th, 2023 Jacksonville Water and Sewer Advisory Committee to order. Mr. Vice, do we have a quorum?
Yes, we have a quorum.
Has everyone had a chance to review the agenda items?
Yes.
Are there any discussions? Hearing none, I'll accept the motion to accept the agenda.
So moved.
Second. Thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Agenda adopted. Has everyone had a chance to review the August's minutes, meeting minutes? Are there any omissions or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, I'll accept the motion to accept the minutes as written.
So moved.
Okay, thank you. Second?
Second.
All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Minutes approved. All right, first I'd like to welcome our guest speakers tonight, and it's been a little bit since we've been here, but we're here now, and then turn it over to Mr. Hanson.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Board. Tonight we just have a couple of updates for you. We have a couple of big efforts underway, and we kind of wanted to bring you up to date on where we're at with those. The first one is federally passed down to the state mandated. There's no funding yet, although there apparently has been some budgeted in the way of grants that will be available to water providers in the future. So tonight what we want to update you on is the lead and copper rule changes. I know that you have seen this in the past. Kind of wanted to give you an update because we do have some changes and some determinations from the state, and we have some efforts that we've made as a staff. So just as a reminder, the lead and copper rules were implemented in 1991, which were big for water systems. Prior to somewhere midway of 1986, lead was used in water piping. Lead solder joints. There was actually some lead pipe that was used that was less than 2 inches. And fast forward, we now know that lead is bad for us, right? So, but a lot of water systems have lead in them. So we have lead and copper rules that we have to comply with. Since that time, there have been multiple revisions to that rule. They apply across the country, so that you're talking more than 68,000 public water systems that have to comply. And right now, the rule that we're currently under, based on our system and our history, is that we do have to do lead sampling for our water system every 3 years. So what can change that is if you have findings or new things introduced into your system or changes in your system, or like the city has a partnership from WASA for a development out on Blue Creek School Road. That development is newly constructed, but because it's considered a new water system, because it's not contiguous to our water system, we have to sample it for lead. So, there's no lead in that system because it was built under literally 2 years ago standards, but we still have to follow and comply with the rule. So the rule applies across the board. The latest revision that we've talked about prior is what applies to water service lines. So we're talking not necessarily the water mains in the street, but primarily the service lines that lead up to an individual house or to a business or a commercial. And really where they're focused is primarily on lines less than 2 inches. And the reason for that is historically lead was not used in piping over 2 inches. So right now the rule states that we have to go out and identify any lead service lines in our system. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute, and I'll give you kind of an overview and talk with you some of the challenges that we face. And then really the big thing that we expect that this will lead to is at some point they're gonna say, all right, now you've identified them, get them out of your system. And if you think it's gonna be expensive to identify them, think about how expensive it's gonna be to get them out of a system. So what we're talking about is, again, that service line. You have the water main in the street, you have a water service line that leads out of the street, and primarily in the city, if we're talking about a house, commercial resident, you're talking about typically a 3/4 to 1 inch pipe that leads up behind the sidewalk to a water meter. And then from the water meter, it goes across the front yard of the house or business and then into the business, right? So you can see at the bottom of that, we talk about what's the city responsibility and what does the property owner own. So if we go to a call for a water service leak, if it's at the meter, even if it's on the resident side of the meter, if it's at the meter or to the street, it is the city's responsibility. So we're talking about that area that says City of Jacksonville underneath. From the meter to the resident, it's actually the property owner's responsibility. So let's say that there's a tree in the front yard behind the meter, roots like water, goes in, over time there's a small leak, root gets in, creates a larger leak. Property owner's responsible for that. If you have a company putting in fiber in the street and they nick the water service under the sidewalk or in the street, the city, through the company, is responsible for that, right? So, or if we mismark something, the city's responsible for that. So that's a general overview that applies pretty much across the country. There's a few, very few, that have adopted ordinances that say from the main to the house or the business is the property owners, just the meter is the city's, and the city provides the meter, owns the meter, and that's it, or the water provider. The challenge with that is if something happens in a street, how many residents can truly afford to come make a repair and then fix the street that it needs to be, to the standard that it needs to be. So it's really not a realistic standard. But the city of Jacksonville's policy is from the property owner's side of the meter to the street.
That's after you've identified that needs replacement.
That's right. So here's the catch with the lead and copper rules. They've said we don't care. The city is we're not responsible for maintenance, but what we are responsible for is identifying the material of the pipe. And I'm going to get into that in just a minute. So what they've said is you have to come in and find anywhere in your system that contains lead. So our focus is going to be prior 1986 or prior, because again, that change was somewhere mid 86, and going back in tax records and looking when structures built or when infrastructure was put in the ground, it gets really hard to identify mid anything. So we can easily identify a year, but we can't identify a month in a year for more than 30 years ago. So what we've done is we've gone through, and I'm going to show you this in a minute, and identified any properties that were built after 1987 or after, and we've removed those from our database of properties that we need to identify. So the three ways that the EPA and the state have said you can identify lead service lines is through utilizing as-builts, if they're accurate, where available. The challenge we have there is most of our as-builts show the mains in the street. They do a good job of identifying what that material is. But then when you look at the service line piece, we don't have that information. primarily because it was attached to probably somewhere in a detail in the back of the plans that over time didn't get scanned or went missing. So we have where the mains are located and we have what the material of the mains are for most of the city, but what we don't have is what those individual service lines are. The other thing you can do is a visual inspection, and I'll show you that in a minute, or you can use some sort of emerging technology, which is what we talked with you in the past, and I'm gonna give you an update on that. So this is kind of the guidance that's been issued and what it looks like. We will have this available for the public to review, but you can see the top is lead and it gives a brief description. I can tell you the most of what we have in our system that we found so far is plastic and galvanized. So, as a matter of fact, we haven't done a ton of inspections yet, but everything that we've inspected, we found galvanized or plastic. So, the first way is a visual identification. We actually literally go out, dig a hole, look at the pipe, do the scratch test or whatever we need to do, and then document it, cover it up, and go to the next house. The other way is to use a vacuum truck and do what they call hydro excavating. So you go out and literally you suck out a hole using water and vacuum, and you create a nice round hole to inspect. The problem is that's a very expensive piece of expensive asset to tie up doing that kind of thing when we already have two in our system running full-time 5 to 6 days a week. But it is a method that can be used. The other that the city had identified is as an emerging technology was the swordfish unit. And this is what it looks like. You pull the meter out, you feed a probe toward the house, pull it back out, feed it toward the road, and you get both sides. And the way this works, we actually had a demonstration and it worked very well, is the different material types provide a resistance to the signal sent. And the best way I can say is plastic doesn't conduct electricity, metal does. And depending on the type of metal, it conducts it at a better rate. And lead conducts it very well. So when they would send out a signal using this probe from inside the pipe, your lead is typically in that 95% plus return rate for the signal, whereas plastic is, under 10. So, galvanized is, I want to say galvanized was between 60 and 80. And I don't remember copper, but it is obvious when we're doing the demonstration of what the material is. The problem is the state, we submitted our plan to the state, they reviewed it, they made contact with EPA, they reviewed it and denied it.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
So the concern is the probe, as it moves through the inside of the wall, could knock scale loose and knock things loose into the water. We had prepared for that and had actually put together a plan where we would flush every house for a minimum of 10 to 20 minutes, depending on the house. If you find plastic, less time.
Yeah.
If you find a metal or lead, much longer.
Yes.
So we thought that was a viable plan. Initially, the state was on board, and they came back and after talking with EPA, denied our plan.
Wow.
So we had one of these units actually ordered in our hands, going through testing, and we hadn't paid for it yet, thank goodness. And we looked at the manufacturer and said, well, We don't like the determination, but there's not much we can do about it. We will let you satisfy the EPA and the state, and we will reconsider. So I'm not saying it's a dead issue. They are working on it hard. Obviously, they want to sell their product. But what I can tell you is right now that's a no, and we still have to continue. So we are back to dig. And I hate to say it, but we have to dig more than once because we have to identify both sides. So, part of the reason for discussing with you with this tonight is there's a lot of people that are very particular about their yards. Metronet has been out there digging up people's yard. Brightspeed is currently doing it right now, and the city of Jacksonville is not going to be far behind them. Now, the catch for us is should be a smaller pothole, literally just big enough that we can identify. And I'll talk to you a minute about how we plan to do this.
Do most of these service lines on the city side, or do you have grass areas, or do you have a lot of areas that are not?
The good thing is while our little graphic that we created really doesn't show a grass strip, most of ours,
residential areas do.
Yeah, most of ours we have what we call a 3-foot utility strip that we can work in. Where we don't have that, we will be right up behind the meter.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So we will do our absolute best not to take up road or sidewalk, yes, because that'll get expensive real fast.
Save those till the end.
So we do have some things that we've been working on following the determination from the state. We've developed a plan where we will follow, and I'll give you, just kind of a brief overview of some of what we'll do. Anytime we go out to make a repair, we document it, we identify it and document it. We're there, we're digging, it makes sense. So we're already doing that, and we've already done over 100 of those. So we are, again, if we're talking about newer than 87, then it doesn't apply. So we're still fixing those leaks. Yeah. But where we determine the structure is older than 87, we are documenting that as we make repairs. The other thing that we're doing is we're creating, and I'm going to show you this in a minute, we've identified all of the individual properties that have structures built prior to 87. We are building plans to go through and kind of random sample those. The reason is a lot of these neighborhoods were built in phases by the same developer. It's a reasonable assumption that a developer is going to use the same materials as he's building out a neighborhood. Now, where that could differ is, builder A buys a lot and builder B buys a lot, and they use different plumbers.
Right.
So on the residential side, it could vary house to house, but it's still less likely because you're talking about a specific time period, and typically builders are probably going to buy lots together, not necessarily one here and somebody else here. So our plan is recognizing those patterns that we've seen is to identify certain areas that will go in and random sample that section, and we haven't determined whether we'll do 10% of the section or a certain number of homes, but what we'll do is we'll kind of scatter them through that area. And if we don't find lead, we'll make the assumption that it's less likely, not impossible, but less likely that lead will be contained, in the other structures around. So we will move to another area. If we find an area that has lead or contains lead, we have a requirement to provide that information to the homeowner or business owner within 30 days. So what we don't want to do is go into an area, find it, report it, and not tell anybody else in the area. So if we find it, we will do a concentrated effort in that area during that 30-day period so that we can get those notifications and homeowners can get it all at the same time. We can answer the questions. And we've even we will have the federal requirement is for certain language, But if we get into a concentrated area, we will probably do much more than that. You know, because really the danger is if you let it sit, it's contact time. The lead pipe really isn't dangerous if you can use the water.
Yeah.
It's if you let it sit there and it leach into the water. So if you're talking about you go to bed and you brush your teeth first thing in the morning, there's no real concern. But if you go away for a week, you probably want to flush some of your faucets to run water through so that you turn that water over and get fresher water. So we will do a concentrated effort in that area. And we're going to move systematically throughout the city in that manner. Now, ultimately, we still have a responsibility to check every service line. So even those areas that we've said, less risk because we've done some random sampling, we will have to come back and get those houses too. But we feel that this is the best method of kind of moving through and identifying where we think we're more likely to have lead. And it helps us concentrate our efforts and our manpower. In doing that, we've also, in this time, I told you that we have been, anytime we fix something, we've been documenting what it is, what the material is, both on the city and on the business or homeowner side. We have built an interactive database that the public will be able to, there'll be a staff piece, staff facing, and a public facing database. There's nothing in it yet, but there will be. The database is built. It's just now we'll have to start getting what our tests have been and what's there into that database. And I'm going to show you a couple of screenshots from that in a few minutes. And then ultimately we have a sunset date that this has to be done by, and all of that information has to be submitted to the state in their format. So I guess I lied. I don't have, so I apologize. I thought I had some screenshots for you, but they ended up getting cut out. But so what the screenshots would have shown you is the staff side is a dashboard. That dashboard is literally how many, we've already identified how many service lines we have to go test, and it's in excess of 10,000. I don't remember the exact number, but it's in excess of 10,000. There's a gauge that shows where we are in the process. So as you can imagine, at 100, which sounds good, we're at like 1% or less.
Started.
Yeah. So and then what it shows though is how many we found in each area. And then the public facing and then how many notifications have we done? And I don't remember what else was on, but that database has, that dashboard has about 6 or 7 different items. And then it has in the middle, it has a chart view and a map view. So if somebody called up and said, I want to know about a particular address, we can actually plug that address in and it'll pop right up. The public facing piece will have not as much information, but it will have a GIS-based map of all of the structures built pre-1987, and it will show, as we identify the types of service lines, what the service line is both on their side and our side. So with a symbol, so it'll say, if it's, red and gray if it's, lead on the homeowner side and plastic on the city side, or gray and gray if it's plastic on both sides. So there's kind of a circle on that address, and the bottom half is the city side and the top half is the residential side. So we think that that'll be a very good visual as we're moving through this effort. And of course, again, if there's lead found on either side, there is a notification that is required within 30 days. In addition, one of the other things that we've done is we thought it might be nice to give people that are a little more interested a opportunity to participate. So we built a public facing survey So they can actually go on, we haven't released it yet, but what we'll do is release it through our website and social media. And if they've had any work done at their house, they can self-identify. Now, we're responsible for the information, so at some point we'll probably have to verify, but it gives an opportunity for us to gather data. Again, if somebody says, I had work done, and my plumber says I have lead, we know to go look.
Yeah.
So that's really where it'll be very handy. So we have built that piece also, we just haven't released it yet. So those are all things that we will be doing probably in the next 2 months, getting all of that information out, releasing that information to the public. What we're doing right now, actually our GIS person that we're working with took the 132 that we've done so far, and she's entering them into our database. And then from there, we'll move over from the work order system we're currently using to one specifically built for this. And as our people are in the field and they fill it out mobile, it automatically goes into the database. So it will self-populate, and the dashboards and the public-facing piece will update automatically. So I apologize for not having those in the slideshow. I'm not sure what happened, but
So the homeowner is responsible for his portion of the, what if he has lead pipes? The homeowner's responsible to replace those?
well, right now, if they want them replaced today, yes, it's the homeowner responsibility. If you're asking me what I think might happen in the future, because what's the likelihood that a homeowner is actually gonna go spend, and I don't know what it would cost, but let's say $10,000 on the low end to go, you're probably better at this than me or you, but I can't imagine that it would be cheaper than that to replace a service line and replumb if it goes up under the house. So I think in the future, what'll happen is there will probably be some grant funds available, but they'll say, water system, you have the professional staff, you have the ability, you replace it. Could be wrong, I hope I'm wrong, but because that's a
No
huge
cost to
effort.
the
But I
homeowner.
could see, I mean, historically, that's where you put the responsibility is on the municipality because, or the water provider, because we're the professionals in that industry.
Yeah.
So this is gonna work for businesses as well as
It will.
residential?
Yes,
So what
sir.
about like New River Shopping Center, where you got like
A whole
a
system.
meter in the sidewalk and
Yeah, we'll have to go through, and that's one where if they have as-built, we could rely on that information, or we've done so many repairs out there, we could probably tell you what that is.
I mean, the
So-
shopping center?
Yeah, so
Okay.
we've had a few where, there's different owners, so I'm not calling any single
Right.
person out. But we've had a few where we had to issue you repair in 30 days or we're gonna repair and bill you.
Wow.
And we've had to go repair and bill. So now we don't repair asphalt and that kind of stuff, but it's city water that's leaking, we go fix it. So we do have the right to do that.
Okay, so if it's mandated by the state that the homeowner has to replace his lines, like you said, there's gonna be grants or something like that. That's gonna be very expensive for the
If the homeowner has to do it, and again, the real concern is if you let the water sit in the pipes. That's the real concern. As long as you're using the water,
Right.
there's not much concern. And I think everybody knows that what's driving this is Flint, Michigan, right? That's what, there's been others since then, but that's what precipitated this. But if you go back and look at that case study, they had manufacturing plants and had been buying water from Detroit. And the problem is there was a lot of contact time because the water usage had dropped so much. And then it was so expensive because they had lost so many of those users. They went and built their own treatment facility. But the big thing that they didn't do is think about how aggressive was the water on their pipes. Because water, depending on the pH of water and the other organics and chemicals in water, it can have an effect on pipes. So what happened is they didn't feed anything and they had aggressive water on a system that contained lead pipes. And they had large pipes, so the water wasn't turning over as fast. So there was kind of a whole host of problems. The great thing about the city of Jacksonville is, you know, we have the Black Creek and we have the Castle Hayne that goes through the water plant, and we feed zinc orthophosphate, which the purpose is to protect the pipes and coat any lead joints or lead pipes that are out there. And on top of that, we've had our water tested and we have a pretty neutral water. It's not aggressive in any part of the process. We tested our raw water, our through the process, so our water that is being treated, and then our finished water on the other side. So the good thing is there's not a lot of concerns there. And then, you know, the great thing, you know, everybody is familiar with Boomtown, right? We refer to as Boomtown because essentially before the 40s we were, you know, a dot on a map. But so the other is we don't have an old system compared to a lot of places. So if you draw a line, and for those of you that grew up here, if you draw a line in the sand of the mid 80s and look at what's happened since then, you realize real quick that there's a large part of the city we don't even have to go look at. So, you know, no Carolina Forest, no, you know, half of Northwoods, the back half of Northwoods where it's woodlands in that area, Williamsburg Plantation. I mean, all of those large subdivisions automatically come out. So you're talking kind of the older part of Northwoods, the Bryn Mawr area, you know, kind of the country club area, and even some of the country club area is fairly new.
Right.
So, you know, we've got a lot out there, but we also have a lot that we don't have to do.
So what do you think is the best to have if you said, I want the best as far as that service line between the meter and your house?
I don't know, because I've recently heard PVC may not be the best. I would have said PVC.
Right.
Right.
So I don't know. I think now it's a man-made, manufactured material that's going to contain some type of chemical. So if you ask me, I'm gonna say PVC or poly, right? A plastic pipe.
And how long does it take before you find out that's not good for you? So
Well, exactly. I mean,
Next thing.
at some point, you know, now everybody, because of Gen X, everybody's figured out that PFAS is horrible for you, and that's what Teflon was based off of. You know, anybody that had a non-stick pan used it for a lot of years. And then the BPA in plastics, they determined that wasn't great for you. So, you know, I hate to say it, I don't know. You know,
I'm gonna say,
Right.
you know, sometimes you have to replace that. I mean, like,
Yep.
you hit a leak and they say, well, you need to replace the stuff, so what would be?
I would say a
recommendation?
plastic. Yeah, some sort of plastic pipe would be the best.
Oh, no.
I guess glass maybe, but I can't imagine maintaining that. So that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you for all that. It's very informative because most of our clientele or people that watch this is very interested in what's happening with their home and knowing that there's expected things that they're supposed to be doing. But we appreciate that. Ms. Christie.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes,
Ward. I'm going to talk to you today about Western Regional Sewer System. This is actually Randa Souls' project, but I'm going to talk about it for her tonight as she's not able to be with us. The estimated cost for the construction is over $43 million. The construction is supposed to take place between fiscal year 23 to 26. We actually started in fiscal year 24 as we're in fiscal year 24 now. The project breakdown consists of contracts, 3 of those. The first one being Force Main Segment 2, which is what we're in as of right now. The second one is Force Main Segment 1. And the third one is Western Regional Pump Station and LTS upgrades. The funding, or part of the funding, is coming from a grant from NCDEQ, which is over $23 million. Funds will need to be spent by December of 2026, which that should not be an issue, obviously.
And a large credit should go to Senator Lazar because he brought us
Right.
the $20 million.
Awesome.
So this screen here shows you actually what area contract 1 is referring to. So that's from the LTS plant out on Fire Tower Road up to Pony Farm Road. And that's actually segment 1 force main.
So did you say that is underway?
That is underway, yes, sir.
So how long has that been going on?
So they've been clearing and grubbing a little over a month.
Yes.
Okay, so they've just started.
They've just started.
How much was that first phase?
13 million.
Yeah, I was gonna say right at
Maybe close to 14,
Yeah.
but it was in the 13 to 14 range.
Carolina Utilities.
Carolina
Yeah,
Utilities.
I think I did hear that. Yeah.
So contract 1, once again, is the force main. There's 20,000 linear feet of 36-inch PVC. And 20,000 linear feet of 1.5-inch conduit to be installed. Once again, as I said, the clearing and grubbing is underway, and the pipe is scheduled to be delivered the middle of November. And we are anticipating construction to be around 395 days.
Could you go back one?
Yes, sir.
What's the linear feet, 1.5-inch?
What's the conduit
Fiber.
Oh, you're gonna put something
So we're-
beside the pipe? Okay,
Yes,
okay,
yeah.
okay.
Since we're digging, the idea is we'll bench up and I think it's actually 2 runs of 1.5-inch fiber, and it will carry out to the land treatment site. Right now, we lease fiber for all of our operations at LTS, so we're reliant on Spectrum, and we have a lot of problems.
I bet.
So, you know, anybody familiar with delays, and of course, we're
Yeah.
in the county, in a rural area, so it really is a challenge for us.
So the contractor's installing conduit for you, and at some point,
We'll pull the
you'll
fiber,
come back and pull fiber.
yes. It'll be a dark conduit. They're putting in the handholds and everything
Yeah.
too.
Cool.
Thank you.
Good
Yes, sir.
question.
This slide here shows 3 different pictures. The one on the left is actually the beginning of what it looked like prior to us starting the clearing and grubbing. The second picture is midway as we're going through clearing and grubbing, and then the final picture on the right is what it looks like after they've finished. The second, this picture here is actually for contract 2, which will pick up from Pony Farm Road 258 to the actual pump station for Western Regional. And that's gonna come in behind Williamsburg Parkway.
When's that gonna be bid?
I'm fixing to get to that, yes, sir.
There we go.
So we're gonna bid that in January of 2024.
The idea was to let the contractor get started, get a little overlap, so you don't, because they do have to tie together.
Sure.
So you need one ahead of the other.
Once again, the construction for this one's anticipated for 395 days. And we're installing 12,000 linear feet of the 36-inch PVC. The challenge with this one's gonna be including the directional bore that's gonna go under New River.
And it's a long directional bore too.
How long is it?
I want to say it's 1,100 or 1,200 feet.
So we did one 10, 12 years ago. I say we did. It was one of our projects we got on base where we had a 8-inch from Hospital Point over to the firing ranges. So it was a mile. It was 5,200
Wow.
feet or something. And then another one from the air station over there that was probably 1,100 or 1,200 feet. So that is one heck of an operation.
It is. And it takes a long way to lay out that pipe, and especially a mile.
Oh, yeah.
Man, I've done 900's the farthest I've gone, and it posed problems. It tried to float up on us, and so it's interesting.
Yeah.
And it doesn't say it up there, but there's conduit included in this section also. So the conduit will actually come, when the project gets finished, the overall project's finished, it will tie in the intersection to fiber we have at the intersection of Western and Gum Branch, that signal system, tie in there and go all the way across to Pony Farm and 258, and then out to LTS. So it'll tie all that together. And then, and some of that conduit, we've actually talked about at least the county needs fiber to their buildings. And that one of the things that they've identified they really need is to be able to connect their EOC, which is in the Commons, to their governmental building, which is in Burton Park.
Yeah.
So there's been a discussion of them leasing one of those conduits that we're installing for their fiber.
So are you installing enough?
I think so. I think it's a bundle. I don't think it's just one. I think it's a bundle of 4 maybe.
Okay.
Okay, so this slide here shows the final phase, which is contract 3. There will be improvements to LTS there at Fire Tower Road, and then also the building of the pump station. That one is scheduled to bid in the fall of 2024. We'll be installing a 7,500 GPM duplex pump station, which will include 2 pumps, VFDs, and SCADA, and also an on-site generator. We will also be upgrading to triplex pump for the hydrogen peroxide feed at LTS, and also a PLC system upgrade to monitor the new flow coming in.
So compared to the main, or what we have now, what's our main one? This is 7,500. What's the one we got now?
It's 7 miles.
No, I'm talking about the GPM.
Oh,
the gallons
oh.
per minute. I mean,
Oh my goodness, it can handle a peak of 21.5 million gallons a day, so whatever that would be.
I gotta do the math. Think about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is probably close to that. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. That's fine.
Give me a minute, I'll figure it out for you.
So they're almost comparable. That's what I was getting at. It's almost like doubling your ability there.
And that's all I have on that. Do y'all have
I was
any
gonna
questions?
add
Oh, sorry.
the hydrogen peroxide upgrades. The hydrogen peroxide that we feed currently is not a permit requirement. It's in our permit, but it's not a treatment requirement. We actually feed that to be good neighbors. It actually takes the sulfur smell and the hydrogen sulfide gas smell. That kind of, I don't know how else to say it. It's not methane, but it's that kind of smell. It takes that out. So we like to be good neighbors. So that hydrogen peroxide feed is not for treatment. It's actually to remove odor. And I would argue if you go out there, unless you're standing immediately next to Headworks, which is where we remove the solids, and that does have a smell. But if you're not standing next to Headworks, you never know what we are. You know, so.
Also, it's important to remember that that project provides some redundancy to the main pump station should anything happen there, and it supports growth, future growth for the cities.
Thank you, Derek.
Okay.
Did anybody have additional questions on that?
So when will it be done?
So,
Everything.
yeah, they are expecting to have everything complete in December of 2025. Is that correct?
Yes. I'll be surprised if we hit that, but that's the
goal.
That's the
eager
anticipated,
goal,
yes.
And the reason we said that is recognizing it's construction, weather, those kind of things. It does give us a year before we hit our deadline for the money. So.
All right, well, if that's
That's it,
conclusion,
thank
thank you for that update. It's always good to know everything that's going on in the city every time they're digging somewhere. Does anyone have any other further questions or issues that they'd like to discuss on this open discussion time?
If I'm guessing, I would say 16,000 gallons a minute
Oh, it's the main.
for the main.
Okay. So about half again.
Any comments? All right. Well, I just want to make everyone aware that it's the week of the 23rd of October and the week prior, you'll see a lot of folks out here for the Beirut Memorial. We're anticipating the 40th anniversary, and we're anticipating about 2,000 to 3,000 people out at site. We're treating it as we did for the 30th. So when you see all these folks out there, and then the hotels are packed, and then we have some big guests coming, so if you can make it, by all means, we look forward to seeing you.
So it'll be on site at the?
Yes, sir, at the Beirut Memorial.
As usual.
Yes, sir.
Keep going.
All right, anyways, I thought I'd mention that because you're gonna have an influx of folks, and very important time in Jacksonville's history. In closing, did you have something else?
Yeah, I wanted to mention one other thing I should have said in open discussion, but I'd be remiss if I didn't say that we had two operators that went. One is Jonathan Hemsworth. He is our plant superintendent of the water plant, and the other is Scott Rixman. And John received AWOL Operator of the Year for North Carolina, and Scott received Seawell Operator of the Year for North Carolina.
Wow.
So across the state, we have two Operator of the Years for those specific certificates today.
Wow, awesome.
That's fantastic.
And this, I think John's actually been selected twice now. I think the other one was overall Operator of the Year.
Cool.
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, so if there's nothing else, our next regular scheduled meeting, we're gonna skip November, and we're gonna go to 5:30 on Thursday, December 14th is our next scheduled meeting. If there's no other business or issues, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, second,
Second.
stand adjourned.